I have been the night security guard at the City Conservatory of Music for 42 years, and I have walked the empty marble corridors of that building between midnight and 6 in the morning more times than I have walked any other floor on earth. I have in those years seen what the building does when nobody is watching it, the way the great chandelier in the foyer cools and gives a small chime 2 hours after the last student has gone home, the way the polished floor of the main hall settles into its own quiet at 3 in the morning. I have, in those years, seen perhaps 100 small private things between members of the conservatory's small night staff. The one I am about to tell you about, the morning Miss Niam Riordan, the pre-dawn cleaner of the main hall, sat down at the school's great Steinway concert grand and played Chopin for our old caretaker Mr. Liam Cassidy, who has been quietly going blind for 2 years and had stopped playing his own beloved upright at home, is the one I have wanted for a long time to set down in writing. I am Patrick O'Sullivan. I am 68. The cleaner was Niam Riordan. She was 23. The caretaker was Mr. Cassidy, who was 66 and had been at the conservatory longer than I had. The morning was a Thursday last November. Mr. Cassidy had been the building's caretaker for 48 years. He had begun as a 16-year-old apprentice under the previous caretaker, who had been his uncle. He had grown up 2 streets away. He had married a woman named Bridie Cassidy, who had also worked in the building, in the conservatory's small canteen, and Bridie had died of cancer 11 years before, very suddenly in the spring. After Bridie's death, Mr. Cassidy had moved into the small caretaker's flat on the top floor of the building, because he had not been able to bear the empty house. He had said, in the conservatory's small dining room one lunchtime, that he would rather sleep above the music than under his own ceiling, and the principal at the time had quietly arranged for him to have the flat at a peppercorn rent for as long as he wished to stay. He had an old Bechstein upright in that flat. It had been his father's. He had not, as a young man, been a serious pianist. He had not gone to the conservatory as a student, but his father had been a parish piano teacher, and Mr. Cassidy had learned at his father's bench through his boyhood, and he had played the Bechstein every evening by himself for 48 years. He played the Chopin nocturnes mostly. He played them slowly. He played them, you understand, as a private comfort. He did not, as a rule, let anyone hear him. I had heard him many evenings, through the closed door of the caretaker's flat, on my 11 o'clock patrol of the top floor. I had stopped once or twice and listened for a minute and walked on. I had never spoken with him about the Bechstein. He had not, in 42 years of our knowing each other, brought it up. Some things in a building like the conservatory are not brought up because they belong to the man who is doing them, and a night security guard knows when to keep his mouth shut. 2 summers ago Mr. Cassidy began to find his eyes failing. He had not at first said anything. He had begun to ask one of the young secretaries to read the rota to him before each shift. He had begun to keep the corridor lights brighter than he used to keep them. He had begun very slowly to set aside the small jobs that needed close detail, replacing a hinge pin, threading a fuse, and to leave them for the day staff. Last summer he saw a specialist. The specialist gave him a name for what was happening. I shall not write the name, because Mr. Cassidy has asked me not to write it, and told him that within 2 or 3 years he would be, in his eyes, mostly in the dark. He stopped playing the Bechstein in his flat that month. He told me this himself last September on a Wednesday evening at perhaps 10:30. I had come up to the top floor to check the corridor. He had been sitting on the small bench in the corridor outside his door. He had a cup of tea in his hand. He had not been crying, but his face was the face of a man who has been thinking too long. I sat down beside him. I asked him mildly what was on his mind. He said, "Patrick, I cannot see the music well enough any more to read the Chopin. The notes are blurring. The lower octave has begun to go. I have been playing those nocturnes for 48 years from the page. Bridie used to say I played them better when I was looking at them, and I cannot, with these eyes, play them from the page any longer. I have stopped. The Bechstein has been silent for 3 weeks. I said, "Liam, you know them by heart. You could play them from memory." He said, "I could. I do not want to. I have all my life played them off the page. To play them from memory is to admit that I have begun to play them without Bridie. She used to set the page open for me. She used to turn the pages. The whole thing of it, Patrick, was Bridie and me and the page. I cannot play them another way, so I shall not." He drank his tea. We sat in the corridor for perhaps 20 minutes. He did not say anything else about the Chopin. I did not either. When I got up to continue my patrol, he thanked me for sitting. He went into his flat and closed the door. The Bechstein that night was silent. It was silent for 9 more weeks. Niam Riordan had been at the conservatory for 11 months. She was a quiet, polite young woman from the west of the country who had come into the city for work after her mother's small grocery shop had closed. She had been hired through an agency on the cleaning staff. She worked the pre-dawn shift in the main hall 4 in the morning until 8. She vacuumed the long stretch of carpet between the rows of red velvet seats. She polished the brass on the railings of the stage. She wiped down the lid of the great Steinway concert grand, which sat at the center of the empty hall, with a soft cloth and the special polish the conservatory had ordered for it for 30 years. She did this 6 mornings a week. I had spoken with her perhaps 100 times in 11 months, the way the night staff speaks to the dawn shift cleaners as they pass each other in the corridor, small civil words about the weather and the late train and the bun she had brought down from the canteen. She was a quiet, polite young woman. She did not talk about herself. She had not, in 11 months, said a single thing to me about playing the piano. I learned later that she had been at the parish conservatory in the small town she had grown up in until she was 16. She had been the only student in her year offered a scholarship to come into the city for the senior conservatory, the very building she was now cleaning the floor of. She had turned the scholarship down because her mother needed her at the shop. She had kept playing privately on the upright in the parish hall through her teens. She had not, in the 7 years since, played for an audience. She had not, since she had come into the city, played at all. She had been listening to Mr. Cassidy at the corridor bench in September. She had been on her break from the main hall, sitting on the bottom step of the staff stairs at the end of the corridor, the place the night staff sit when they need a few minutes. She had been near enough to hear him. She had not that evening said a word to me or to him. She had finished her break. She had gone back down to the hall. She had thought about it, she told me later, for 9 weeks. On the Thursday morning in November, at perhaps 4:05, I came down the staff stairs into the foyer for my routine sweep of the lower corridor. I saw the main hall doors slightly ajar. The hall lights were on at low. I went to the doors. I looked through. Niamh Riordan was sitting at the great Steinway concert grand. She had her cleaning trolley parked a polite distance from the bench. She was wearing her cleaning overalls. She had her hands above the keys. She had not yet played. I stood in the doorway. I did not speak. I could see from where I was that Mr. Cassidy was standing in the side doorway across the hall with his hand on the door frame. He had come down, as he did most mornings, to start the boiler in the basement, and he had stopped to listen to the hall because he could hear, even with his failing eyes, that something was about to be done in his hall that had not been done in it before at this hour. He had not yet noticed me. Niamh, very gently, played the first phrase of the Chopin nocturne in E-flat major, Opus 9, No. 2. I want to describe what she did, because I have heard that nocturne played in that hall by the senior students of the conservatory perhaps 200 times in 42 years. I have heard it played by the world's best pianists at the conservatory's evening recitals perhaps 30 times. I have never, in those 230 occasions, heard it played the way Niamh Riordan played it on the Thursday morning in November at 4:05. She played it slowly. She played it with the long, unhurried breath of a person who had been listening to a man tell her, 8 weeks before, that he had stopped playing this same nocturne because his wife was no longer there to set the page open for him. She played it as a person plays a nocturne when she has decided to give it back, on behalf of the wife who could no longer give it, to the husband who had stopped. Mr. Cassidy did not move from the side doorway. He stood with his hand on the frame. He listened. By the end of the first phrase, he had set his other hand against the wall. By the end of the first page, he was leaning his shoulder against the doorframe in the way a man leans when he does not trust his legs. Niamh did not look up. She did not, I am sure, know that he was in the side doorway. She played the whole of Opus 9, No. 2. She did not embellish. She did not show off. She gave the long right-hand melody its full breath. She set the soft left-hand chords beneath it without hurry. She brought the nocturne to its quiet close. She lifted her hands an inch above the keyboard. She let the last chord settle. Then, without pause, she began the C-sharp minor nocturne Opus Posthumous, and played that too slowly from memory. I will tell you a thing about the C-sharp minor nocturne. It is the nocturne in the Chopin set that has the most patient walking left hand and the most quietly heartbroken right. It is the nocturne Mr. Cassidy had been playing in particular in the years since Bridie's death. I had heard it from his door in the corridor 100 times. He had told me once, in a small private moment, that he had played it at her funeral on the chapel piano, because it had been her favorite of the Chopin set. Niamh, who had been listening to him for 11 months, played the C-sharp minor. In the side doorway, Mr. Cassidy began to weep. He did not weep loudly. He wept the small private way an old man weeps, when something he had decided he was no longer allowed to hear has been brought back to him by a person he did not expect. His shoulders moved very slightly. He did not lift his hand from the frame. The tears went down his face without his stopping them. I did not, of course, go into the hall. I stayed at my doorway. I watched the two of them, the cleaner at the Steinway in her overalls, the caretaker against the doorframe across the hall, and I did not move. Niamh finished the C-sharp minor. She set her hands in her lap. She turned her head finally toward the side doorway, because the sound of Mr. Cassidy's breathing had reached her across the empty hall. She saw him. She stood very gently from the bench. She walked across the polished floor in her cleaning shoes. She crossed the hall to the side doorway. She did not, until she was perhaps 3 steps from him, say anything. She said in a voice the empty hall picked up and laid down, "Mr. Cassidy, I should have asked your permission. I am sorry I did not. I have been listening to the Bechstein for 11 months from the corridor and from the staff stairs. I knew it had stopped. I did not in 11 months ask you about it. I should have. I thought perhaps this morning that if I were to play them in the hall, where I am only the cleaner and where I would not be intruding on you, you might come down. I am sorry, sir." Mr. Cassidy did not, for a moment, find his voice. Then he said, in the voice of a man who was speaking, in fact, to his late wife, "Bridie, Bridie, thank you, thank you, thank you." He had said her name 3 times. He had not known, in the half-light of the side doorway with his eyes failing, that the woman standing 3 steps from him was not his wife. He had heard the nocturnes in the empty hall, played as Bridie used to listen to him play them, and the part of him that did not need eyes to see had decided that Bridie had come back. Niamh, who had a steady, kind heart, did not correct him. She took his free hand in both of hers. She said very gently, "She was here for the playing, Mr. Cassidy. She wanted you to hear them again. She wanted you to know they are still yours." He nodded. He did not let go of her hand. They stood that way in the side doorway for perhaps a long minute. I came across the hall then. I came quietly. I touched Mr. Cassidy's elbow. He did not startle. I said, "Liam, Patrick here. Let's sit on the bench in the corridor a moment, you and me." He nodded. He let go of Niamh's hand. He turned his face toward her, and his eyes, even failing, made out enough to know now that she was a young woman in cleaning overalls and not his wife. He said very softly, "Forgive me, miss. I knew it was you. I did not for a moment. I am sorry." Niamh said, "Mr. Cassidy, there is nothing to forgive. I am glad I could play them. I have been wanting to play them for you for a long time." I took him to the corridor bench. We sat. Niamh, in the hall, packed up her cleaning trolley and went on with her shift in the long quiet of an early winter morning. He played his Bechstein the next evening. I heard him from the corridor. He played Opus 9 No. 2 from memory. He did not need the page. He played it slowly. The Bechstein has been sounding in the caretaker's flat every evening since. Niamh has played in the main hall every Thursday morning since at 4:05 before the dawn cleaning begins. She plays the Chopin set. She plays the 1 or 2 pieces Mr. Cassidy has, in his quiet way, suggested over a cup of tea in the corridor. He comes down most Thursdays now to start the boiler at the same hour she begins to play. He sits in the side doorway with his hand on the frame. He listens. The principal of the conservatory, who is a kind woman in her 50s, found out about the Thursday morning playing in February. She came to me to confirm what she had heard, because she had heard by then from 2 of the day staff. I confirmed it. She did not interrupt. She did, the following week, very quietly arrange 2 things. The first was that Niamh Riordan was offered a full scholarship to the conservatory's evening adult program, which the conservatory runs for students who could not, in their youth, take up their first offers. The fees were waived. The hours would fit around her cleaning shift. She accepted. The second was that Mr. Cassidy was given, by the principal, a small new task in his caretaker's duties, to open the main hall for Miss Riordan's Thursday morning practice at 4 in the morning, and to ensure the hall's environmental conditions are appropriate for the great Steinway. The task had not existed before. It was, in fact, the smallest of fictions. But it gave Mr. Cassidy a reason to come down to the hall on a Thursday morning that did not require him to admit, even to himself, that he was coming down because the woman at the keyboard had become, in his own private interior life, the messenger of the woman he had loved and lost. He has, in the month since, begun to play in the hall too. He will not play the Steinway. He plays the small upright that lives in the corner of the practice rooms off the back of the hall. He plays at the same hour Niamh plays. The 2 of them, the cleaner and the caretaker, the young woman from the west and the old man from 2 streets away, practice their separate Chopin in their separate corners of the conservatory on a Thursday morning at 4:05. and the great empty hall in between them listens. I have been the night security guard for 42 years. I will retire in the spring. The picture I shall keep is not the famous pianists in the green room or the public recitals. It is Niamh Riordan at the Steinway in her cleaning overalls at 4:05 on a November Thursday, and Mr. Cassidy in the side doorway with his hand on the frame and his face wet, and the C-sharp minor nocturne moving through the empty hall in the long, unhurried breath of a young woman who had decided, on behalf of a wife she had never met, to give an old man back the pieces he had stopped playing.